Yes, now bless now. Don't forget the rest now. We're going to continue learning about heavy metal, so classes in session, people. I've come out of the shower, yes. I am sliding off of the chair, yes. Don't worry, I do have pants on, alright. But I just don't want you to get too excited by the idea of me being windswept, damp, fresh to death, alright? So now that disclaimer is over, let's learn a little bit about heavy metal, yeah? KOTP TV, King of the Pit TV, the fan subculture, that's where we're delving into. And then we're going to look at the origin of the term heavy metal, alright? So if you are a little bit behind, I am doing a series delving deep in. If you disagree with anything, let me know. Got the window open, so if you hear any background noise, it's not my bloody problem. It has been argued that heavy metal has outlasted many other rock genres, largely due to the emergence of an intense, exclusionary, and strongly masculine subculture. And that's mad, innit? Because I no doubt it is masculine, it's full of bloody dudes, it's a complete sausage party, but I don't really hear many reference metal as masculine. Although there is, some sort of I know more metal than you, one-upmanship, like that whole macho masculine element in the discussion and hierarchy sort of perspective of the subculture, but not necessarily as directly overtly violent and primitive as like hardcore is. But it exists, yeah, it's full of dudes, man, of course. While the metal fan base is largely young, white, male, and blue collar, the group is tolerant of those outside its core demographic base who follow its codes of dress, appearance, and behaviour. Um, yeah, to an extent. To an extent, but I might have to close the window. One moment, people. Just a couple of little ones having fun outside, so I apologise if there's a bit of a racket, but I can't help it, people. So, yeah, let's talk about that. So, the group is tolerant of those outside its core demographic base who follows its codes of dress, appearance, and behaviour. Yeah, if you got long hair and wear a battle jacket, you'll be accepted in a way, but it's not going to stop the indirect, you know. I'm not going to sidestep it. There is racism in metal music, and that might be overt, such as within, the blackened genres, or it just might be incredibly indirect and disguised as dark jokes and sort of the edgy fashion that might come with certain metal communities and characters. It's an edgy style of music. It attracts a lot of edgy people, and to be honest, I don't think you're able to avoid it in most genres of music, to be honest. But as far as tolerance is concerned, I don't know. Depends who you speak to. Identification with the subculture is strengthened not only by the group experience of concert going and shared elements of fashion, but also by contributing to metal magazines and more recently websites. Attending live concerts in particular has been called the holiest of heavy metal communions. The metal scene has been characterized as a subculture of alienation with its own code of authenticity. This code puts several demands on its performers. They must appear both completely devoted to the music and loyal to the subculture that supports it. They must appear uninterested in mainstream appeal and radio hits, and they must never sell out. Dina Weinstein stated that for the fans themselves, the code promotes opposition to established authority and separateness from the rest of society. So that's room for thought, innit? I understand and I agree as far as we are the outsiders. We've been picked on by the popular kids. We don't want you to go over to their side and become the popular kids and, sell out and become famous and worldwide and have everybody know it. There is an element of that. When I was younger, when I was a teenager, I was what you would consider a gatekeeper. I didn't want nobody listening to the music I was listening to. I would only drip feed, you know what I mean, elements of the stuff I was listening to. I would hint at how extreme it was and how mad it was and how cool I was for listening to this music. But I never put people onto it because I always wanted to be an outsider. I never wanted to bring people into understanding. And that's wrong. That's incredibly wrong. But I know I'm not. I was one of many. And to this day, I know that still exists tenfold. Um, and yeah, my opinion of it's changed now. As a musician, as somebody who's played music for a while, had so many projects, delved with so many bands and so forth, let me tell you, every band wants to, in the back of their mind, not only live through music, but have a successful and fruitful experience doing so. And at some point, you might need to, do a bit of the dirty marketing thing and become a little bit more screwed on, as opposed to someone who's just doing it for the art, man, for the music, man. You know what I mean? I could talk about it forever because you get it a lot in punk rock music. You're not allowed to sign a contract. You're not allowed to make money because that's selling out, and that's like nothing to do with the art. It's all about the money. But then you can go and live a sad life. You know what I mean? Getting paid nothing to do something you don't want to do in order to pay your bills, whilst you keep your art a hobby as opposed to a lifestyle and your literal job. You know what I mean? It's up to you how you perceive it. Musician and filmmaker Rob Zombie observed, most of the kids who come to my shows seem like really imaginative kids with a lot of creative energy. They don't know what to do with it, and that metal is outsider music for outsiders. Nobody wants to be the weird kid. You just somehow end up being the weird kid. It's kind of like that. But with metal, you have all the weird kids in one place. Scholars of metal have noted the tendency of fans to classify and reject some performers and some other fans of posers who pretended to be part of the subculture, but who were deemed to lack authenticity and sincerity. You see that a lot more so with the younger people, throwing the word poser around and so forth. And when you get older, you should open your mind and see, especially the new kids coming in and out and stuff, people just getting into the music. They just might be a bit naive, They might not know the rules and regulations and the unwritten sort of boundaries and perimeters of that particular style of music and the crowd and all that. But when you're younger, you're too busy pointing the finger, you know what I mean? Might be you who's the poser because you're too busy trying to project that on other people. So let's have a look at the origin of the term. The origin of the term heavy metal in a musical context is uncertain. The phrase has been used for centuries in chemistry and metallurgy, I don't know what that word is, where the periodic table organizes elements of both light and heavy metals, example uranium. And the early use of the term in modern popular culture was by countercultural writer William S. Burroughs in his 1961 novel The Soft Machine. The Soft Machine includes a character known as Uranian Willie, the heavy metal kid. Yes, now. Burroughs' next novel, Nova Express, develops his theme using heavy metal as a metaphor for addictive drugs, with their diseases and orgasm drugs. What? With their diseases and orgasm drugs and their sexless parasite life forms. Heavy metal people of Uranus wrapped in cool blue mist of vaporized banknotes. And this sounds shit. I won't read this. I won't bother reading this, me. I want to get to some factoids. You know what I mean? Tell me some facts. Inspired by Burroughs' novels, the term was used in the title of the 1967 album featuring the Human Host and the Heavy Metal Kids by Hapshash and the Coloured Coat. Who the hell are they? Let's have a quick deek of them. They're influential. You see how they're all British? Rule Britannia. You see that? Influential British graphic design and avant-garde musical partnership in the late 60s consisted of Michael English. What a name, eh? That's all we need to know about them. Which has been claimed to be his first use in the context of music. The phrase was later lifted by Sandy Pearlman, who used the term to describe the Byrds for their supposed aluminium style of context and effect, particularly on their album The Notorious Byrd Brothers in '68. That seems like the root. Metal historian Ian Christie perhaps describes what the components of the term mean in hippie speak. Heavy, that's heavy, man. Heavy is roughly synonymous with potent or profound, and metal designates a certain type of mood, grinding and weighted as with metal. The word heavy in this sense was a basic element of beatnik and later countercultural hippie slang and references to heavy music. Typically slower, more amplified variations of standard pop fare were already common by the mid-60s, such as in reference to Vanilla Fudge. Iron Butterfly's debut album, which was released in '68, was titled Heavy. First use of heavy metal in a song lyric is in reference to a motorcycle in the Steppenwolf song Born to be Wild. Awesome. Also released that year, I like Smoke and Lightning, Heavy Metal Thunder, Racing with the Wind, and Feeling That I'm Under. Bump, bum, bump, 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 bum, bum, born to be wild. An early documented use of the phrase in rock criticism appears in Sandy Perlman's 67 Crawdaddy review of the Rolling Stones. Seems like this Sandy Perlman's at the forefront. The Rolling Stones Got Live If You Want It 66 record, albeit as a description of the sound rather as the genre. On this album, the Stones go metal. Technology is in the saddle as an ideal and as a method. Another appears in the 68 issue of Rolling Stone, in which Barry Gifford wrote about the album a long time coming. Man, whoever's put this article together has done the homework. By US band Electric Flag. Electric Flag's quite a cool band name, I think. Nobody who's been listening to Mike Bloomfield either talking or playing in the last... Mike Bloomfield's guy did Tubular Bells, in it? I think so. It says composer. Correct me if I'm wrong. In the last few years, could have expected this. This is the new soul music, the synthesis of white blues and heavy metal rock. In the 7th of September 68 edition of the Seattle Daily Times, reviewer Susan Schwartz wrote that the Jimi Hendrix Experience has a heavy metal blues sound. In January 1970, Lucian K. Truscott, reviewing Led Zeppelin II for the Village Voice, described the sound as heavy and made comparisons with Blue Cheer and Vanilla Fudge. I'd never listened to Vanilla Fudge. Blue Cheer is referenced heaps in these articles. Nobody references them, though, as far as inspiration. Other early documented use of the phrase are from reviews by critic Mike Saunders in the 70 issue of Rolling Stone. He commented on an album put out in the previous year by the British band Humble Pie, Safe as Yesterday Is. Their first American release proved that Humble Pie could be boring in a lot of ways. Here they were a noisy, unmelodic, heavy metal-laden shit rock band with the loud and noisy parts beyond doubt. There were a couple of nice songs and one monumental pile of reviews. He described the band's latest self-titled release as more of the 27th rate heavy metal crap. This guy was going in the 70s. Start of a new decade, he just started going in. In a review of Sir Lord Baltimore's Kingdom Come in the May 71 edition of Cream, Saunders wrote, Sir Lord Baltimore seems to have downpacked most of all the heavy metal tricks in the book. Cream critic Lester Bangs is credited with popularising the term via his early 70s essays on bands such as Zeppelin and Sabbath. Through the decade, heavy metal was used by certain critics as a virtually automatic put-down. In 79, lead New York Times popular music critic John Rockwell described what he called as heavy metal rock as brutally aggressive music played mostly for minds clouded by drugs, and in a different article as a crude exaggeration of rock basics that appeals to white teenagers. Coined by Black Sabbath drummer Bill Ward, downer rock was one of the earliest terms used to describe this style of music and was applied to acts such as Sabbath and blood rock. Classic Rock magazine described the downer rock culture revolving around the use of quaaludes, and the drinking of wine. The term would later be replaced by heavy metal. Earlier on, as heavy metal emerged partially from heavy psychedelic rock known as acid rock was used interchangeably with heavy metal and hard rock. Acid rock generally describes heavy, hard or raw psychedelic rock. Musicologist Steve Waxman stated that the distinction between acid rock, hard rock and heavy metal can at some point never be more than tenuous, while percussionist John Beck defined acid rock as synonymous with hard rock and heavy metal. Apart from acid rock, the terms heavy metal and hard rock have often been used interchangeably, particularly in discussing bands of the 1970s, a period where the terms were largely synonymous. For example, the 83 edition of the Rolling Stone Encyclopedia of Rock and Roll includes the following passage. Known for its aggressive blues-based hard rock style, Aerosmith was the top American heavy metal band of the mid-70s. The term heavy metal is self-defeating, remarked Kiss bassist Gene Simmons. When I think of heavy metal, I've always thought of elves and evil dwarves and evil princes and princesses. A lot of the Maiden and Priest records were real metal records. I sure as hell don't think Metallica's metal or Guns N' Roses is metal or Kiss is metal. It just doesn't deal with the ground opening up and little dwarves coming out and riding dragons, like bad Dio records. So my man Gene Simmons from Kiss is basing a lot of it around lyrical content and conceptual basis. A little bit of a nerd factor to it, it seems, Gene Simmons thinks. So that's a little bit of food for thought. We're going to go into the history of metal coming up next. I mean, we've got heaps to go, honestly. We're going to look at the history of heavy metal coming up, so that's going to be crazy. So I'll see you on the flip side, people. One love.